Breaking news tonight, the back-to-back mass shootings just as President Biden takes action on gun violence. In Texas, the workplace shooting leaving at least one dead, several injured, the manhunt for the suspect. And in South Carolina, the former NFL player police say killed 5 people, including a doctor, his wife, and their 2 grandchildren. The search for a motive. It comes as President Biden announces 6 executive actions on what he calls an epidemic of gun violence in America. Among them, a crackdown on untraceable ghost guns and a push for red flag laws. Tonight, the fierce backlash from Republicans. Chilling testimony, the medical expert telling the jury George Floyd died from a low level of oxygen, not from drugs or heart problems, as the defense argues. The image, he says, shows Floyd was, quote, literally trying to breathe with his fingers and knuckles under Derek Chauvin's knee. The COVID surge in the Midwest, a growing number of cases in kids and teens, and so-called breakthrough infections. What's your risk of catching COVID after you've been fully vaccinated? Our series, American Worker After COVID, what will your workplace look like? And the golf legend making history at the Masters.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. We're going to begin with breaking news here tonight, just hours after President Biden signed executive actions on new gun restrictions. Yet another apparent mass shooting has occurred, the second in under 24 hours. Late this afternoon, gunfire erupting at a business in Bryan, Texas. Officials say at least one person is dead. Several others are critically hurt. It comes after 5 people were shot and killed yesterday by a former NFL player in South Carolina. The president, frustrated by what he calls an epidemic of mass shootings, earlier today saying enough prayers, time for action. We'll tell you about those actions in a moment, but first, details on that breaking news from Texas. Morgan Chesky is there.
Tonight, tragedy in Texas. Police converging on the scene of another mass shooting. The gunman opening fire on multiple people. Police saying at least one person is dead, 4 others hospitalized. The city of Bryan, 100 miles northwest of Houston, on high alert.
Officers responded to the scene and arrived in a fairly short period of time. However, the shooter had gone by the time officers got here.
The first reports of gunfire came in just after 2:30 local time.
We have one shot in the arm, one shot in the back.
The calls centering around a cabinet business. Police are now asking everyone to steer clear until more evidence can be gathered at the scene.
And late tonight, police say that they now know 6 people have been shot, and they may have a suspect in custody, but they are not saying if he is the sole person responsible. In the meantime, ATF agents are headed to that scene to assist in the ongoing investigation. Lester.
All right, Morgan Chesky with that breaking news. Thanks. This follows that staggering loss in a South Carolina community near Charlotte after a former NFL player shot and killed 5 people, including a well-known doctor, his wife, and 2 grandchildren. Sam Brock is there with late details.
Tonight, unspeakable tragedy.
There's nothing about this right now that makes sense to any of us.
Police say former NFL player Philip Adams shot and killed 70-year-old Robert Leslie, a prominent doctor, his wife Barbara, and their 2 grandkids, only 9 and 5 years old, as well as a 38-year-old man working on the property, critically injuring a second worker before taking his own life in a bedroom at his nearby parents' home. Adams' father, choked up, speaking to NBC station WCNC.
Yeah, he was a good kid, and I think the football messed him up.
Police today reading an emotional statement from the victims' families.
There are no answers that will satisfy the question why. We are sure of one thing. We do not grieve as those without hope.
Adams was a 2010 draft pick of the San Francisco 49ers, who played for 6 NFL teams. The league releasing a statement. Our hearts go out to the families and friends of the victims of this devastating tragedy. In a 2019 Valentine's tweet, Robert Leslie wrote, "Lives are unexpectedly changed or ended, and it happens suddenly. So tell that someone that you love just what you're thinking of." At this point, the sheriff's department says there's no indication of a doctor-patient relationship between these neighbors. Lester?
All right, Sam Brock, thank you. And as you heard, those mass shootings coming as President Biden signed executive actions on guns. He's now facing backlash from Republicans for moves they say takes away American Second Amendment rights. Kristen Welker is at the White House.
Tonight, with more mass shootings in the headlines, President Biden announcing new restrictions on guns.
This is an epidemic, for God's sake, and it has to stop.
The president unveiling a series of executive actions, including directing the Justice Department to draft model red flag laws, which allow courts to temporarily bar someone who's viewed as a danger to themselves or others from accessing guns, and directing the DOJ to propose rules to stop the proliferation of so-called ghost guns, homemade firearms assembled from kits that do not have traceable serial numbers. In 2019, a shooter using a ghost gun opened fire at a California high school, killing 2 children, including Brian Muehlberger's 15-year-old daughter, Gracie.
She knew how to make people laugh. She was my little jokester. And to have that empty seat at the dinner table is just, it's unbearable.
A gun owner himself, he called today an important step.
This is personal for you.
Yes, it very much is. I don't want any parent to go through what we've gone through over the last year and a half.
Still, some gun control advocates fault the president for breaking his campaign promise to submit gun legislation on day one. Today, the president calling on Congress to act.
Enough prayers. Time for some action.
But many Republicans slamming the president for going around Congress with executive actions, which they say undermine the gun rights of law-abiding citizens.
It's no surprise that a liberal president would start looking at more gun control. But I can tell you it's not going to make us any safer. It just infringes on our Second Amendment rights. It infringes on law-abiding Americans who exercise that right lawfully every day.
Kristen, what specifically is the president asking Congress to do on guns?
He wants the Senate to pass 2 bills that expand background checks. Meanwhile, the president nominated David Chipman to be the first permanent director of the ATF in 6 years. Chipman will likely face criticism from Republicans for his support of tougher gun measures. Lester. All
right, Kristen, thanks very much. Let's talk now about the question in a Minnesota courtroom. How exactly did George Floyd die? It is the question in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin, and today powerful testimony about it in a way we haven't heard before from a renowned breathing expert. Gabe Gutierrez is in Minneapolis.
In the calmest of demeanors, Dr. Martin Tobin cut to the heart of George Floyd's death.
Mr. Floyd died from a low level of oxygen, and this caused damage to his brain.
A direct and powerful rebuttal of the defense's argument that Floyd died because of drugs and underlying medical conditions.
Do any of those conditions have anything to do with the cause of Mr. Floyd's death, in your professional opinion, whatsoever?
None whatsoever.
Dr. Tobin showed jurors a 3D animation to illustrate what happened. He testified that Chauvin kept his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 3 minutes after Floyd took his last breath.
You can see his eyes, he's conscious, and then you see that he isn't. That's the moment the life goes out of his body.
Dr. Tobin, an expert pulmonologist who wrote what's known in the medical field as the Bible on breathing, testified other parts of Floyd's body revealed his desperate struggle to survive.
You see his knuckle against the tire. And to most people, this doesn't look terribly significant, but to a physiologist, this is extraordinarily significant, because this tells you that he has used up his resources and he is now literally trying to breathe with his fingers and knuckles.
Dr. Tobin also told jurors this picture of Chauvin's toe off the ground showed the officer place most of his weight on Floyd. During cross-examination, Chauvin's defense attorney tried to cast some doubt, but the world-renowned expert gave little ground.
You've taken this case and you've literally boiled it down into a nanosecond.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
Late today, a toxicologist testified that the amount of meth found in Floyd's blood was low and consistent with a single prescription dose. Tomorrow, we're expecting to hear from the county medical examiner about his controversial autopsy. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez tonight, thank you. In just 60 seconds, how some people are becoming infected with COVID even after getting vaccinated. And our exclusive tonight, a troubling problem facing a growing number of young children and what parents need to know. Let's turn now to the COVID crisis and steady progress vaccinating Americans against COVID, but also some new setbacks to tell you about. More than 112 million have now received at least one dose, while 36,000 are hospitalized. Many newly infected are young, and a small number have been fully vaccinated. Miguel Almaguer explains.
As the nation adds another 74,000 new COVID cases in a single day, tonight the numbers are among the most concerning for the young. New infections among 10 to 19-year-olds are climbing. In Minnesota, they account for 1 in every 6 new cases. Dr. Vin Gupta is seeing younger patients with serious lung problems.
Once COVID-19 wreaks havoc on lungs, it doesn't really matter if you're older or younger.
No one and no region is immune. For 16 straight days, Michigan has seen over a 100% spike in new infection rates.
The numbers are just going up and up and up. And every day when I look at our COVID numbers, they're higher than the day before.
With 25% of adults vaccinated, there are more reports of breakthrough cases. 102 fully vaccinated people in Washington later caught the virus. It comes after 141 cases in South Carolina and 374 in Minnesota. Experts say the infections are rare and a reminder the vaccine's a strong layer of protection, but not a silver bullet. Nurse practitioner Diane Schmidt contracted COVID 4 months after she was vaccinated.
My case is definitely an outlier. I would still highly recommend the vaccine.
But in North Carolina and Colorado, closures at mass vaccination sites. Hundreds had appointments canceled after a small number of adverse reactions. Tonight, both centers set to soon reopen. Progress, but not without setbacks.
There is also new worry the true number of new infections is much higher than being reported. One reason, many testing sites have turned into vaccination centers. Lester?
Okay, Miguel, thank you. And make a plan so you'll be ready when it's your turn for your vaccination. Visit planyourvaccine.com for more. Now to our NBC News exclusive. For years, we've reported that the number of people struggling with suicidal thoughts and self-harm has been rising. Tonight, new evidence that's true even for young children. Here's Kate Snow.
There's a little swing back over that way that she absolutely loved to play on.
Last summer, Brandy Bielicki was about to take her daughter Cody on vacation near their home in Wisconsin.
And about 4 o'clock that day, she called me at work and we FaceTimed. She said, "Mom, can you FaceTime me?" "Sure, kid." She lost a tooth. She wanted to tell me she lost a tooth.
But when Brandy went home, the door was open, and the only sign of Cody was a short note.
It was the first cry for help, and she went all the way.
Authorities found Cody's body in a nearby field. She was 10 years old.
It was the shock to the system. That was the last thing I was thinking. It was that she was going to take her own life, because there was no signs.
None of it makes sense.
None of it made sense.
Death from suicide among children remains rare, but the number of children ages 6 to 12 who visited children's hospitals for suicidal thoughts or self-harm has more than doubled since 2016. Dr. Megan Schott heads psychiatric emergency services at Children's National Hospital.
If a child asks for help or tells you that they're struggling, believe them and help get them mental health treatment.
Signs parents can look for in young kids: grades dropping, anger and irritability, not wanting to go outside. And while Dr. Schott says it's good that talking about mental health has been normalized, she's concerned that younger kids are more exposed now to suicide and self-harm.
So if you see your friend cutting or talking about it, you might starting to think about it.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. As a single mom, Brandy had been so close with Cody.
Do you think maybe she just did something super impulsive?
Absolutely. I think at 10 years old, they can't see past the tip of their nose, and they don't understand permanence.
She's expecting a baby boy now and decorated his nursery with sloths, Cody's favorite animal. She's pleading for families to have conversations with their young kids.
Because if I can be caught off guard, and I was so involved with my daughter, it was just me and her. If I can be caught off guard, anybody can. You know, I thought I had beat all the odds as a single parent, and apparently there's one that I missed.
Kate, it just tears your heart out. Do experts have advice on how to talk to younger kids?
Yeah, Lester, psychologists suggest asking open-ended questions and using what kids understand. So maybe ask, have you been having thoughts that worry you? Do you ever feel so bad that you don't want to be here? And most importantly, telling children there are people who can help and getting professional help. We have more resources on our Nightly News Facebook page, Lester.
Yeah, Kate, thank you for bringing us that story. If you or someone you know needs help, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text TALK to 741-741. Up next here tonight, how companies will try to re-engage workers. All right, we're back now with our series on the American worker. While many companies say employees are happy and productive working from home, there is also a push to bring teams back. Here's Tom Costello.
In Arlington, Virginia, the ground is trembling as workers lay the foundation for Amazon's new HQ2.
We're hoping all 25,000 people, as time allows, will feel comfortable coming back to the office.
25,000 over the next 10 years. While working remotely has worked, Amazon says there's no substitute for face-to-face collaboration. Why is collaboration in person so important for you guys?
We believe the sharing of ideas and that in-person communication really helps foster a faster and more efficient innovation process.
COVID has accelerated change in the workplace. A recent report found big cities have lost 400,000 jobs, while suburbs and smaller cities have added 175,000. One of New York's biggest real estate developers believes 10 to 15% of workers will stay home, the rest splitting their time or coming back.
If you're looking to attract and retain the greatest talent pool, they got to feel part of your organization. They got to feel they have a sense of purpose, they have a sense of values, part of your culture.
That's what 25-year-old Ali Mika misses, hired just 10 days before the lockdown.
Just working from home, not having that tribal knowledge of talking to the person at the desk next to me to learn from.
But after a year of working from home, a lot of Americans have no interest in returning to a big box office building. They want more elbow room, more recreation, more quality of life. Software company executive Alan Gilchrist used to bounce between offices around the world. A year ago, he rebased to Hawaii.
I found that I can work from Hawaii and manage those expectations and manage those demands effectively. I like the camaraderie, but I also like quiet and a bit of a sanctuary to go deep in my space.
Back at Amazon's HQ2, the blueprints call for more collaboration rooms, restaurants, open and outdoor space, hoping a very different workplace will encourage even more game-changing innovation. Tom Costello, NBC News, Arlington, Virginia.
On this Holocaust Remembrance Day, lessons from the past more relevant than ever as we confront an epidemic of hate in our own time. Here's Harry Smith.
101-year-old Eddie Jaku survived the Auschwitz death camp. His parents did not.
My father, 52, and my mom, 49, died in a gas chamber with 1,500 people, 20 minutes before you suffocate.
Jaku had considered himself a proud German, Jewish, yes, but a German first, until the Holocaust.
Who invents something like this? Now they ask, but has been done 80 years ago, now it's time to forget. Never.
The hatred of the Holocaust is not yesterday's news.
I know the lesson well that hate continues.
Elizabeth Edelstein heads education efforts at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York.
I'm seeing not just anti-Semitism, not just acts of hate against Jews, but against other neighbors.
Hate crimes in America have risen to the highest level in more than a decade. In January, these men posted pictures of themselves doing a Nazi salute outside the museum. Hate does not live in a vacuum. It requires allies, those who will look away.
Ich sage immer, wir haben das nicht gewusst, aber Täter sind wir ja auch. Wir haben das ja.
In the new film Final Account, we hear Germans who grew up in Nazi youth programs, then served the Third Reich. For some, denial is their best defense.
Das glaube ich nie. Das glaube ich nie. Das glaube ich nicht.
Of the Holocaust, survivor Primo Levi said this: "It happened, therefore it can happen again." Harry Smith, NBC News, New York.
That's nightly news for this Thursday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.